This is a man named Kenneth Shoulders. And, again, I'm dealing with science that's personally well over my head, so I want to be very careful and not overreach, but I want to bring this to your attention. Kenneth Shoulders studied a phenomenon known as EVOs. This is called exotic vacuum objects. Just what the heck are EVOs? Many of you have heard of the Hutchinson effect by John Hutchinson. He's still around. He was in Vancouver. He would do experiments in which metals would be like dealing with magnetism and this type of thing, in which metals would be completely mangled and their atomic structure would be transformed in ways that would not be predictable. And it's like, how did this happen? Why did this happen? Well, Kenneth Shoulders worked on this as well. And uh, I do know that Hal Puthoff was knew Kenneth Shoulders and worked with a lot of this information as well. I have a strong feeling that Kenneth Shoulders' work on this has gone deep black. That's sure as heck what it looks like to me. So one thing that Shoulders did is he proved that I'm reading this here, a portion of a spark discharge. So you think of an electrical spark, which is ions and electrons, for whatever reason that we do not understand, coalesce into organized geometric structures, right? Not all of the spark, but some of the spark. And that these structures are guided by the fields induced by their own motion. So the way that these particles move allows them to create a certain kind of field, and these appear to be self-organizing structures. That is, so they're self-organizing plasmas, essentially. And he called them EVOs, exotic vacuum objects. He named them. And his discovery, apparently, and I don't think anyone has disproven this, is that these things exist everywhere in nature. They are all over the place. Now, why is that significant? Well, because EVOs produce a wide array of anomalies. They can atomize or chew up matter, just like in the Hutchinson effects that were done back in the 1970s. And they induce nuclear reactions. They nullify mass and inertia of matter, and they do more. And the other thing that he stated or said is that if you scale up the effects of EVOs, they are analogous to the effects produced by UFOs. In other words, harmful radiation emissions, electromagnetic frequencies, violation of Newtonian physics, and even cloaking and more. So what he apparently was seeing is that these effects seem or potentially are connected to the effects that you get from UFOs. So that there's something going on here. There's an element to these particles that A, are worth looking into. B, could be absolutely revolutionary in our understanding of the nature of reality itself. And there's not a whole lot of public research follow-up on Ken Shoulders' work. Those of you with scientific backgrounds better than I do, which is probably many of you, I think you can probably appreciate just how significant that this would be. So relating to EVOs and flying saucers, as I was just saying, basically, this is another slide that says the same thing. It just has a flying saucer image there. So if you scale it up, this is what you get. So Mark McCandlish is talking about EVOs, and he mentions Eric Davis here. McCandlish, in one of his statements, said that Eric Davis was experimenting with mercury plasmas, virtual plasma conditions in a self-organizing vortex configuration like the central column of the ARV. So if you remember the drawing that he did of the ARV, there's a central column there. Apparently, later versions of these ARVs were not using a central column, but had the mercury going around the peripheral of the craft in some way or another. But in the earlier version, it's a central column. So what he's saying is that Eric Davis was experimenting with mercury plasmas, virtual plasma conditions in a self-organizing vortex configuration like the central column of the ARV. He was all set to publish. Word was he had found a way to tap zero-point energy, and then suddenly the paper was classified. This is McCandlish, not me. I'm just repeating what he wrote here. But again, very interesting indeed. I think connecting it to EVOs. So you got that. I'll talk a little bit about scalar and vector potentials. It took me forever to try to understand this. I had a very good friend who patiently walked me through this. Again, this is not my expertise, but I'm explaining it as best I can to you. And people way more conversant than I am can take this and run with it. So according to most mathematicians or physicists, actually, these days, scalar and vector potentials are not necessarily real things. They're simply mathematical abstractions, but they may not be. And if they are not, so scalar potential would be analogous to pressure. So you think of the pressure of a river or the pressure of air or the amount of the density, I guess you could say, of the material or the environment that you're talking about, and that is a determinant of the amount of energy that you'd be able to extract, the amount of pressure that's there. The vector potential has to do with movement or the direction. So it would be like the flow of the water of the river as opposed to the density of the water of the river. So you have these two factors. So if you look at a length of wire with a current that runs through it, the scalar potential would be the if we want to get into things like ether, it'd be the general ether or the pressure of the ether in the room or in the wire, and the vector potential would be the movement of that ether along the wire in the direction of the electron flow. So that's scalar and vector potential. So basically, and this is all I'm going to say here because otherwise I'm going to be even deeper over my head, but if this is true, it would mean that there is a new way to understand basic physics of our universe. This is not how our physicists typically look at this. But if this is true, it's a new way, and it would be a new way to generate energy and propulsion. I'm going to leave it at that.